Now notice, again, that the mind and the will work together in synergy here. Notice that, and this is a source of complication in moral analysis, it's true that your judgment controls, well, how do you put this? How you see what you're going to do chooses, this kind of structures your affective reaction to what you're choosing. But it works the other way around. What I'm trying to say is that mind communicates its intelligence to your freedom, but your freedom transfers its own quality of freedom to your mind, so that nothing can compel either your choice of means, and nothing can compel how you choose to see what you're doing. See what I mean? So what I'm saying is that you can't, the freedom of the mind allows you to frame what you're doing as either reshaping a skull or directly killing an innocent child. You can look at it both ways. The mind is indeterminate because of our freedom, and because our freedom gives us a mind that can look at things under various aspects, we can choose to describe our action in so many different ways, and the way that we end up describing the action is often how we want to describe the action. In other words, our interests control how we describe what we're doing. So if I am interested in striking a blow for women's freedom and personal autonomy, I can describe the abortion I undertake as not as killing an innocent child. I can choose to see it and describe my action as empowering women's choice, you see? Or I could choose to describe what I'm doing as terminating a pregnancy rather than terminating a life. Because it is because it's true, it is terminating a pregnancy. And in a way, it does strike a blow for women's freedom, at least under certain restricted descriptions. So, because the mind can see so many different dimensions to an action, it can, because of its own interests, focus on one way of describing the action, one that conforms to your already existing interest. And so you have your choice, your desire describing your description, and your description also influencing your actual choice. Which means that in a way we can be bound by our descriptions of our actions. If I describe my action as taking the life of an innocent child, it's less likely I'll be able to do it than if I describe it as striking a blow for women's freedom, you see. So freedom and description of action have a symbiotic relationship. That means that we are responsible, actually, for the descriptions that we give to our actions. See that? Okay. Finally, there's execution, which involves performance and enjoyment of the performance, where we actually physically perform the action and then register in our person, in our being, the effects of the action, so that we could not only carry out what we've done in our body, in a performance, but there's an echo of that performance in our being. So, for example, in The Godfather, there is a final scene in which Michael Corleone lies to his wife and says, "No, I didn't kill all those men." He sends her off for a drink, and two of his henchmen come in, and one of them takes his hand and kisses it and says, "Don Corleone." And it's kind of a moment where he handles that moment just like he deserves it. You know, he holds out his hand like a Roman emperor, you know, allowing it to be kissed by his subordinates. When he does that, that's an act of enjoyment. That's where he is accepting the fruits of all his actions and saying and affirming it by his enjoyment, saying, yes, I am the Godfather. See? These two stages are important because the actual performance of an action makes it real, right? I mean, I can intend to diet, but as long as I don't get around to actually cutting out food, I'm not dieting. You might intend to murder, but until you actually get out there and kill somebody, it's not as real. Your action isn't as real as it would be if you actually carried it out. So performance, again, makes the action definitively real. And then the enjoyment of the action is kind of a seeping of the action in your character where it shapes you on a more permanent level. So those are different stages of human action, but the most important ones are those that have to do with the, first of all, the description of the action itself, what we call the object of the act, and we call, there's also the stage or the factor of the intention of the act, and then there is the matter of the circumstances that surround the act. You have the object, which is really a moral description of what you're doing. You have the end, the intention, which describes the good that you were aiming at. And then you have the circumstances that surround the action, that make it more or less fitting. Let's move for a moment to discuss this. Let's move away from the dramatic life and death examples and just go to something which is a little more commonplace, where the stakes aren't so high. Let's imagine the Thanksgiving dinner. Okay, you've got you have your children at the table, and you have your mother at the table. Your father is not at the table because he died 6 months ago. Okay, and this is your mother's first Thanksgiving without her husband and your father. So everyone's around the Thanksgiving table. You have a 14-year-old son who's just becoming a teenager and therefore becoming impossible to live with. He's also discovering at this stage of his life humor, okay? And he thinks he's funny. And your father, of course, had a mannerism of kind of gulping when he talked. Especially when he would get excited, he would kind of gulp when he would pronounce, especially on political questions, all right? So, now it's Thanksgiving dinner. It's the first Thanksgiving without Grandpa. And your kid, I think it's a little somber, okay? So everybody's in kind of a heavy mood. Your kid, at this moment, decides he's going to try to lighten the atmosphere by doing an imitation of Grandpa. And the question turns to politics, and he goes, I think that President Obama, he goes into an imitation of his grandfather imitating Obama. Now, was this a good thing to do or not? How would you describe the action? You could describe it by the kid's intention. What is he aiming at? He's aiming at lightening the atmosphere. Everybody's a little gloomy, and he thinks he can make people laugh. All right? You could describe it as by his intention, which is to amuse. You could describe the action by its actual, the species of the act. What is he doing? Well, again, he's doing an imitation. All right. You could describe the act by its actual effect, which is your mother bursts into tears at the memory of Grandfather and leaves the room. Okay, it didn't really work. The attempt at humor fell flat, and Grandma starts to cry, and this now teenager is in real trouble.